Welcome to Gate City Chronicles. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and I'm here with author Arlene Greenfield, otherwise known as Kramer Greenfield. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm honored to have you here.
Glad to be here.
We were talking a little bit off camera that you've done some writing in the past, and this is actually one of your first. This is your first book that you've written.
My first book, yes, it
but
is.
You were a journalist of some sort.
Out of high school, I had a column of my own, humor column, like an Irma Bombeck type column, where I would write about simple subjects, everyday subjects, and I would satirize them, and it could be something simple like going to the beauty parlor or something like that, and I enjoyed doing that right away. And I was lucky enough, in my local newspaper, that the editor took a shot with me because I was only a kid at that point. And I went in there and I said, I want to work for a newspaper. I don't care. I'll sweep the floor. I'll do whatever I have to do, but I want to work for a newspaper. And he said, what do you got, kid? And I showed him a couple of things, and he said, okay. And the funny thing is, he says, can you draw? Because he needed a drawing for the next day. And I said, yeah, I draw a little. So I drew something, and he says, can you do paste-up work? Because years ago, they did paste-up work. I said, I don't know. They took the columns and they pasted them up before they ran them on the newspaper. So I was doing that. I did everything.
Kind of like a ransom note.
Exactly. So I did that. I did whatever I could do, and then he let me run a column every week, and that was the start of everything. And I would have gone to school for journalism. I had a scholarship in high school, but I fell in love. Well, I thought it was love. It actually was heartburn. If I would have taken 2 Maalox, it would have gone away. But on the other hand, I thought I was in love, so I got married instead. But I did eventually go back to college.
Did you write well during your marriage?
Oh, yeah. I always wrote, and I contributed to my anthologies. I contributed to newspapers, and sometimes I got published, sometimes I didn't. Didn't get paid a lot, but...
I asked you to educate me a little bit about what anthologies were. If you could just rehearse that.
Anthologies are books of short stories that they ask for submissions from writers, and you put together a story or an interview or a memoir, and they take the best of what they feel is quality stuff, and they put it in a little volume, and they sell it. And this is good experience because it's a way to get your feet wet in the business. And sometimes they pay, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it gets your foot in the door so that you can go on and use that in a portfolio, and you got to start somewhere.
Right.
Also,
you become a well-read person in the process, right?
Yeah,
a little Hemingway here, a little bit of Tolstoy.
Well, the way to write is to read. You know, you can't get away from it. You got to read in order to write. It's a learning process. You should be learning all the time about writing to be a writer. That's the way to get there. You can't just wake up and say, I want to write about this. But the story is the thing. People think, oh, well, if I don't go to school for journalism or I don't have a degree, well, it's good to have a lot of knowledge, but it's also good to have a really good story.
Right.
You see the movie stars and politicians and convicts and stuff, I'm sure they don't all have a big background, but they have a great story. So they get someone else to write it for them. A lot of times it's the story that drives the book.
Yeah.
But we have a great writers group that we've been meeting for 10 years, and we throw those ideas back and forth, fast and furious, and that's a big learning experience. And I always tell everybody in the writers group, this is what we do. We learn from one another. If you have somebody in the writers group, the leader, or each other, we learn from each other. We market. We bring in anything that we think is specific to something we talked about last week, writer's prompts, anything that looks like might be interesting to the rest of the group. And if we publish something, we have a portfolio, and we've done very well with this. Last year we published 14 stories, and these were interviews with World War II veterans. And the Derry News published them weekly, and we had ladies from the group. I've never done an interview. I can't do an interview, and would say, let's try it. And they did, and they came out very well.
Right. I think if you just learn to have a conversation
Yeah.
I think that's really what an interview really should be.
Yeah.
Just try to pick somebody's brain, and then after a while, I think that you get in the habit of, when you're listening, we had a previous guest on, he says, they basically lead you where you want to go.
Sure, because you're asking questions, they're answering you, they're telling you the story, and then it's a polishing job. Like, I help edit a lot. So they'd bring the story in, I would edit, the rest of the people would say, do you like the beginning? Do you like the ending? Does it flow? How do you feel about, do you care about this person? So on and so forth. What would make you care more? So we bounce it back and forth. And writing is a lot of times a lonely business. So it's good to get out there and just be with other people, kindred spirits.
Is that group local?
It's in Derry.
It's in Derry, right?
And I was living in Derry at the time. And when I got to Derry, I thought, there isn't a writers group here. And when I was in Massachusetts, I was in the Barnes and Noble's writing group. So I had gone to this night where there was a big sign that said, "A room of one's own." And the ladies that wrote that book were there. So I went there, and they talked about starting your own writers group. So in that room was this one other lady. She was a poet. And I said to her, why don't we start a writers group? She says, well, what'll we do? So I said, well, let's listen and see
By
what
the
they
way,
have
who
to
are
say.
you?
Yeah. I don't wait for introductions.
Right. That's fine.
So so we started talking, and we put an ad in the paper, and we put a big sign in the library. And I said, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see if anybody comes, anybody shows up. Like Woody Allen says, 90% of life is just showing up. Let's see if they show up. And strangely enough, the first night there was like 8 people.
Wow,
said, oh,
that's a group right there.
Here's a beginning.
Yeah.
And now there's about 14 people that show up regularly. It's been going for 10 years, and we've had speakers. We've had a good time. It's a social group as well as a learning group, and we really have a good time. We have speakers. We've had the town historian. We've had poets. We've had the editor of the newspapers. We just have a great time for ourselves. And when I was writing this book, I would bring in patches of the book, and we would be talking, and I'd say, my mother used to say this, I want to throw this in. Do you think this is funny? Do you think this is, like my mother would say, if you were talking about someone and they were really a loser, and you'd say, oh, he's such a schlumel, which means a loser in Yiddish. She'd say, for every pot there's a cover. There was always redeeming qualities, And I'd say, should I throw that in? Oh yeah, that's good. Throw that in.
And you throw a lot of this thing.
A lot of these in there.
Let me say the name of the book, by the way. It's The Blessings and Sorrows of
Schlumel the Angel.
Schlumel,
which is the Yiddish. All Jewish people have a Jewish name, and that's usually the Jewish name for Sheldon or Samuel. That would be the Jewish.
Samuel, yeah.
But she used to have, my mother used to have this Jewish curse. This was a Jewish curse. If she really hated you, she'd say, every tooth in your mouth should fall out except one, and in that one you should have a toothache for the rest of your life. Oh. That was a terrible curse. She really had to hate somebody.
Wow.
But certain things, now that's a terrible thing,
right? That's a terrible thing.
Yeah, but there were certain things that were so terrible they were funny. And there were things that used to go on in my house. I always said that you never understood Yiddish unless you came from a Jewish house, because you have to be born into it, because it happens every day. I never paid much attention to it until one of my friends would come over. She was an Irish girl, and she'd say, why do your mother and grandmother scream at each other all the time? And I said, no, that's the way they talk to each other. Never, And my mother talked with an accent. And she'd say, Winnie the Pooh, and she says, I bought you a Winnie the Pooch, because that's the accent, So, your mother talks funny, she'd say. No, that's the way my mother talks, When my grandmother and my great-grandmother, they had a fight, and my father called up his mother, and he said, you're having a fight with your mother, she's sick. All right, I feel bad, all right. Next thing we know, we're over there, and a cab pulls up. And in the cab, there's no one. I said, Dad, there's a cab out front, and there's no one there. The cab driver comes out with a big pot. He brings it over. He says, this is chicken soup. It's from your mother. She's still mad at her mother, but she wishes her well. So, that's the kind of things they did.
Okay, chicken soup. This is the 3rd time I've heard chicken soup, so something's going on. But today I went to the doctor's, had my knee looked at, and the doctor said, well, you need some of that Jewish medicine. What's that? Chicken soup.
Yeah. So he poured chicken soup over your leg. No.
Yeah, well, that's going to hurt, right? I thought maybe a little ice.
Jewish penicillin. Yeah.
Jewish penicillin. So in the back of the book, though, you have a glossary about
Jewish terms.
Jewish
Jewish terms, Yiddish terms.
Yiddish terms. That's it. I was looking for that word. So this book is about a man who dies.
He dies prematurely by a mistake. It was a mistake. Heaven made a mistake. Not that heaven makes too many mistakes, but they made a mistake, and they sent him to heaven by accident. So to rectify this mistake, they gave him special privileges to go down to earth and special extra powers so that you should go down to earth and do some good deeds and maybe right some wrongs, uses powers to do what he could for the people. So he went down and he delves into a few things. He meets some con men. He meets some people responsible for water pollution. He meets some kids that were about to be teenage suicides, certain big issues of the day, and he does what he can. Right. He does what he can. But he's very excitable, and he gets carried away with things, so he enlists mortals to help them. Very quirky people, but they seem to get along with him pretty well, but he threatens them a lot. So, he tells them, behave yourself, or I'll give you such a shot, your tookus, which is your tookus will say hello to your eyebrows. He says things like that to them, and they think he's a little crazy, but he's an angel. So every once in a while, he opens up those wings and he goes to the ceiling, and they go, "Oh, okay." So they let him do pretty much what he wants. Right. And he has punishment, terrible punishment for people. So they murderers and wife beaters, and he comes into contact with a lot of these bad people. He's kind of like
Superman in a way, or some type of superhero.
in fluffy white wings, yeah.
Fluffy white wings.
And he wears a yarmulke.
Looking at his face, I'd call him Bernie.
Yeah. And the yarmulke is attached to a halo, so it's sort of a combination. But he always loses the halo in the ozone layer when he comes in. He makes terrible landings.
And he loses some feathers and stuff like that.
He usually makes very bad landings. Yeah, he said if he knew God was going to send him to Earth so much, he would have had wheels on his tookus. But and on the other hand, he makes he does do good when he comes down here.
What was the inspiration for this?
There was many inspirations for that. A lot of the men in my life were very, very kind. And if they would have had the power to change things, they probably would have. And I thought of that sometimes. If my father could have changed things, my father would do anything for anybody. If he could have changed things, he would have changed things. He had a restaurant, and he put a sign in the window, free coffee. So somebody would come and say, "I'd like a cup of coffee." My father would say, "You'd have to buy something first. I'm not a charitable institution, But his heart was in the right place, He always was. Or he'd stand in the street and say, "Come on in and buy something. Come in the restaurant and buy something. I have 5 kids to feed." If he had a hook or a net, he'd pull them in. He loved people. He'd do anything for anybody. And I had an uncle like that too, who was a very sweet guy. So a lot of the men in my life, and they loved to talk. They loved to sit and kibitz about anything. They could have a 20-minute conversation about who's got the better bagel, New York, Boston. It was just, it seems like we've lost that art of kibitzing. They would love to kibitz, and they were interesting. And I used to sit as a little kid, and I used to listen and think, wow, that is interesting. But, as I got older, people don't kibitz so much anymore.
No, they do this.
Yeah, right. But they've lost that human contact, So when he comes down to earth, he talks to people, like the teenage suicides. He tries to explain to them why they should want to survive. He gives them good advice. He cares. He shows them he cares. And
he lets them know it's a wonderful life.
It's a wonderful life. And if they don't listen, he duct tapes them to the ceiling or does something like that. Right. There was one kid that he had all kinds of piercings, and he wouldn't listen to him, so he said to him, he called him Mr. Metallic. He said, "Listen, Mr. Metallic, if you don't listen to me, I'll put a magnet on you and put you on the refrigerator." He's a very simple guy. And he has his solutions.
Trying to get his message across.
He has his solutions for things, but kind and good-natured and sort of a lost art.
Right.
He's sort of a lost art. He's the way that you would like people to be, the way you would like people to treat each other. But the people that are bad, no mercy. There's no mercy there.
You'll receive no mercy if you showed no
He
mercy.
he calls them camel dung. He calls them all kinds of terrible names, because that's if they're mean to somebody or they hurt somebody, he has no patience whatsoever for them.
Do you have another book that you're working on
Yes,
right now?
I'm working on a children's book, and I'm working on a book about the hospital. A hospital. I work at a hospital. It's not necessarily my hospital, but because you write about what you know.
Right.
That's basically, we write about what we know. We show, we don't tell. But I think you show and tell both. And that's my next humorous novel is going to be about a hospital.
Let me ask you a little silly question. There's some people that just really don't like to read, but they want to tell a story. Do you think that people that listen to authors or listen to the books, for instance, somebody's reading your book, or they're reading Hemingway, or they're reading Tolstoy, or Shakespeare, and they just listen and they enjoy that they could actually be writers as well?
Well, I was telling you about the dragon. You talk into it and it writes for you. There are people that used to talk into a tape. There are people that they have trouble with their sight, so they listen to tapes. Everybody likes a good story. Everybody likes to tell a story.
Same applies then. If you read a lot, you can write. If you listen a lot, maybe you can tell a story too.
Well, you have to be a good listener.
Right.
You have to be a good reader. You have to glean information in order for the information have to come in order for it to go out.
Right.
And I think communication is probably the most important thing a person can do here on earth. Communicate back and forth. Listen, talk, And I'm sorry to say that a lot of the kids are losing that. My granddaughter said to me, "I'll text you. I'm upset." I said, "How do I know you're upset? You're texting me. I can't see the expression on your face. I can't hear in your voice anything. Don't text me. Don't text me. Call me on the phone. Come and see me." How do I know? Besides,
and a lot of times that can be misinterpreted. You don't.
Yeah.
You can't tell the feeling that's coming through the text. And what do you mean by that? And
the grammar is terrible. It
Right.
gets me right here. Oh, that grammar. Oh, it gives me the cold shivers, because that's my lot in life is grammar and English. You are. Ooh.
And you never went to college?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you did go to college, but not for journalism.
But I took every composition course, every grammar course, every literature course that I could. Mm-hmm. I went to college 3 times. First time I went for insurance. Second time I went for associate in business. Third time I went for medical. I work at the hospital. And every single time I went, every single alternate course that I could take, I took in English. Every tape that I could get my hands on, every book about composition, I read about. Anything that has to do with the English language.
Have you thought of teaching?
I've thought of teaching, and I do a lot of teaching in my group. Most of the time we have speakers, but a lot of times I do the speaking. I do the editing for a lot of the ladies that they show me the stuff, and I edit it. And with all the vehicles that are out there now, with Google and search vehicles and stuff like that, very few people pick up a dictionary or a thesaurus anymore. But they don't even go into the vehicles and see what they can do to correct their own stuff when there's so much stuff out there.
Right.
It's a shame. It's a shame.
I'm a really poor speller.
Well, spell check.
I know, but even with the spell check, sometimes I'll blog, and somebody will say, "Kevin, you misspelled guardian," or something to that effect. And
Shame on you.
Yeah, exactly. And I've looked at it, and I thought, okay, this is ready. And it's never been my gift for spelling.
Well, kids always, I say to the kids, look it up in the dictionary. They say, why should we, Grandma? We got you. I said, no, you look it up.
Right.
When I was a kid, my father made me learn a word every day. Learn a word, use it in a sentence, and spell it. That's why I have a good vocabulary.
I remember my dad saying, you can't think without words. And why does that stick with me? You can't think without words. And it's one of those things that your parents leave with you. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, obviously I have to think with words. So read,
And the languages are great. The flavor. I got sworn at least 3 different languages when I was growing up. My mother, German, my grandmother with the Yiddish, and all these languages. There's a great flavor and rhythm to languages. Like Spanish. I took Spanish in school, and when in the hospital, I meet Spanish people, and I say, poquito español, which means I speak a little of it. I like to speak a little of everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's like having a salad with every different thing in it, that vegetable in it, because that makes you more, expanding. You have more things to say, more ways of saying it. People that limit themselves to 1 or 2 languages.
You know what's interesting? If you go to a Chinese restaurant, and I do this, or any type of restaurant, but a Chinese restaurant, and I say, "谢谢." They go, "Oh, you speak French? You speak Chinese?" Well, that's the only word I know. Can you teach me something else? But their face lights up. It's like, you've just, thank you for saying thank you in my language.
Right.
Sometimes I'd say that to a Korean, and they go, "Oh, I'm not Chinese, but I get it." "Oh, I'm sorry." So teach me to say thank you in their language.
I was having this thing in the hospital. I said, I'm going to learn how to say thank you in every language. And I had a notebook, and I put every language and how to say thank you. And that's what I was doing. I was saying thank you.
Dankeschön, merci.
Yeah, everything. And boy, that went over pretty big. People really like that.
If there's one word you can ever learn.
It makes them feel good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to be able to say that.
Yeah.
And to be able to relate to them on their level. Like people will say, oh, they come into this country, they don't learn the language. Well, the thing is, give them an opportunity to relate to you. Yeah. Come to a point where, and a smile translates in every language, and a touch, to be kind.
Yeah.
Kindness translates.
Well, let me give a boost for my wife then, because she works in the mammography.
Oh, yes.
In Little General. And there's a secretary there that, a teller, not a teller, but a receptionist. And, she speaks broken English, but she loves Tracy because Tracy's kind. And she goes, "Oh, Chiquita, you crazy girl, you're crazy." And she warms up to them, and she's gentle and she's kind, but she doesn't judge. If you're the janitor, or if you're the maid, or you're the president, you're treated with the same courtesy and professionalism and neighborliness. And I love my wife for that. And I'm giving her a little plug, but I like that she can warm people up.
Everybody, yeah.
And of all places, right? You're going to get your mammo.
It's difficult sometimes.
Oh, and that's people faint because they're so stressed out, and you're in the industry.
I know. People come in the emergency room right away. Their blood pressure goes up.
Oh yeah.
Because they're nervous. It's the fear of the unknown. They're not sure what's going to happen. They worry. And the best you can do for anybody is make them feel a little better. I always said, to have a calming effect on a person is really a gift. It's a gift. To make a person relax is a gift.
Yeah, I'm just the opposite. Oh, you're upset? Me too. Right? I'm just.
You feed right into it.
Oh, I do. Yeah. What's wrong? Okay. I'm right there with you. Where my wife will say, chill. Okay, all right, whatever. So you need to have that balancing act.
Yeah.
So how can people find your book?
Well, I'm on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. I'm on Kindle, because I would go to these book signings, and they'd say, "Are you on Kindle?" So I said, they want me to be on Kindle.
Do I look like I'm on Kindle?
Yeah, you want me on Kindle? I'm on Kindle. I'll be on Kindle. But the reason I'm writing a children's book, this is interesting. I have grandchildren. They want the same story all the time. Tell me that story about you and your best friend when you were kids. And they requested it many times. But my daughter requested it. My friends I said, they all want to hear the same story about kids growing up in the 60s. I said, maybe there's something to this. So I wrote it, and I had it illustrated, and I said, I'm going to see what happens with this. I'm not really a children's book writer, but what the hell, Right. I said, I'll give it a shot, and I'll see how that goes. But I'm going to go back to the humorous note. I like to make people laugh. I think there's not enough laughter in the world. I think people have to lighten up a little.
We need more Don Rickles back here, right?
We need something. I don't know. People, my father used to say, you got to laugh every day. If you don't laugh every day, there's something wrong with you. And he would never answer a question. You'd say to him, "How's business?" He'd say, "Could be better, could be worse." You never got an answer out of him. But he always said, I like to make people laugh. People should laugh. People feel better when they laugh. And you know that they do this, all these studies, these big studies. It's true. It's good for a person's health.
Doesn't it say a merry heart maketh like medicine?
That's right.
Right. So I'm proud that you came on the show. Is there any final thoughts that you'd like to?
Well, I just wanted to say that if you want to write, you should write. And the group that I have is a wonderful group. And I think that if you're a lonely writer in your room and you're writing and you've never been published and you want to get published, the first thing you do is join a group because they will help you. They will help you feel good about your writing. They will help you get published if you want to. Some people just want to write their memoirs.
How do people get in your group?
They just, they can email me, cwwg2@juno.com. And, but you can go to writers groups on any search vehicle. There should be one in your area. It makes it less of a lonely business. You get feedback, and you learn how to develop your writing.
Do you have to have a thick skin?
No. You know what? We're never cruel.
Right.
We even talk about how to critique.
Right.
Nicely.
Yeah. There's some coaching, but do you think you could have said it a little bit differently, like this?
We never slam dunk anybody. No,
Right.
no, we're nice to each other.
Right.
My group is all ladies, but there are groups that are mixed.
Yeah.
But you guys, you kind of take over. So there were women that said, we want a group of our own that's just women. And
Us guys, huh?
you
Jason.
guys.
Put us in our place.
Well, not all of you, but
Right. So it's Arlene Greenfield?
Arlene Greenfield,
Arlene
but I write under Kramer because my father said if you ever write or do anything good, please use your maiden name because your first husband was kind of a Schlumel, and I really don't want you to use his name alone without putting it in. So that was the instructions I got.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles. And please pick up the book, The Blessings and Sorrows of Schlumel, the angel.
He's not a Schlumel.
So until next week, that's it for now.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles. And we want to thank our sponsor, Aardvark Dean of Clean, the carpet cleaner in Nashua. You can reach him at 603-630-1743. And if you would like some more information about Gate City Chronicles or want to be a guest, contact me at gatecitychronicles@gmail.com. Until next week, thanks for watching.